All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Maria Prieto, and I'm one of the co-founders here at Film Roundtable. This roundtable will be stored in our vault, where you'll find all of our previous discussions, and we've also launched a podcast. So you can subscribe to that, listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'd like to thank RE Rental for sponsoring this chat and their continued support of all of these conversations. I'm so thrilled. I'm really excited to be here sitting virtually with these two cinematographers. We have Steve Annis joining us from the UK and Khalid Mohtaseb joining us from Saudi Arabia. So welcome. Before we start though.
How long have you been a Saudi citizen, Khalid? Tell me.
For since '93 now, so
really
20 for something years, yeah.
And how many hotels do you own? I hear the hotel business is good in Saudi.
Just a couple. Anyway, before we dive into whatever this is about to be, we want to.
It's gonna be something. It's gonna be something special.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Marie, go on.
No, you're fine. It's just
no, go on.
No, okay, so let's take a moment.
Mm-hmm.
We do this before every roundtable. We just hold silence. We hold space.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, to honor all the 1,111,104 deaths as of today worldwide from COVID. That's 223,876 in the US alone. So along with that, we also want to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nations brothers and sisters whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and other senseless acts of violence. So please join me. Thank you guys. Like I said, we've been holding these moments since our first roundtable, and now that we find ourselves back on set or at work, it's vital that we realize we're still in a global pandemic. We have to be cautious. We have to take care of one another, and we have to continue this lifelong work of empathy and compassion towards one another.
Yeah.
So, that being said, let's dive in. You guys are here to talk about your love of the image, as well as your personal choices, your personal views on art versus commerce, and how those opinions play into your career choices. But before we get into all of that, which is going to be something to unpack, I want to talk a little bit about your journeys. So Steve, why don't you kind of talk us into the first moment you realized that imagery had so much power? Was there a specific work that inspired you, or just...
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's a question that I've been asked quite a few times, but I would say, it's an ongoing thing, and hopefully it'll never end. I mean, it wasn't, I guess, one specific moment. It was just various incidents and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So just a dozens and dozens of numerous events and moments.
Were there specific?
It's funny, Steve. I've known you for quite some time now, and I've never even known that. What actually inspired you to become a DP? There must have been something, right?
I don't know.
You can't not answer that question.
Well, all right. I guess there was a moment where we're talking maybe the mid '90s, and I was in Edinburgh, and I knew that I wanted to do something with film, and I was on a kind of student commercial, and they were shooting on an old Arri 3, the old 35mm Arri 3. And I remember looking at the team around it, and there was something about that camera and what was going on, and the noises that were coming out of it, and this thing that was being laced up. And that was it. It was just seeing that camera. But there were other things. It's watching American Graffiti as a young child, or watching I don't know, watching Jonathan Glazer music videos or Lynn Ramsey films.
Yeah.
There's too many things. And there's still things nowadays that I watch. It's interesting because I sent Khalid a little clip from an 80s music video before the thing started. But I'm serious, Khalid. I actually think music videos are a really good historical document, and you can look at music videos. Sure. No, I'm definitely serious. You look at music videos from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. You look at and it's literally it's a historical document of technology and how it was formed and how film stocks were formed and cameras and it's a bit of an up and down journey and you look at the promos from the early 2010s that were shot on Red 1 and 5D and it's a fascinating thing.
No, but I mean tech aside, even because Steve, you send me those videos quite a bit, those music videos, and if you look at them, they're almost like fashion trends in a sense. I mean, I can't believe that the one that you sent me today was something that was considered original and kind of cool in the 80s or 70s. But
think about the craft of making. You know, it's things that we all take for granted. It's almost like being blind and making music videos, and I genuinely study the craft. And in fact, even this morning, I was looking at on Wikipedia, and there was a list of music video winners from the MTV Award, and you've got amazing DPs, people like Martin Koppen, Pascal Lebeg, Daniel Pearl. And I was actually going through all these videos that were nominated and won MTV Awards for Best Cinematography. And it's fascinating seeing the style and how amazing things were back then. Anyway, I could waffle.
What was the video you sent this morning?
I'm not gonna say that, Maria. Come on. All right.
Too personal.
I don't even
No.
think
I'm not gonna say.
It's just outrageous. It blows my mind that he finds these things.
It was an old. Do you remember a band called Survivor? No. Okay. Fine.
Right.
Let's continue.
Let's move on.
Khalid.
Khalid, same question to you. I mean, what was it that started you down this path, down this love affair of filmmaking?
To be honest, it's the same with Steve. I get that question asked a lot, and I think it changes from time to time. For me, there was really two specific moments in my life. One was the year 1999. I don't even know how old I was. I was a kid, really, but there was so much kind of interesting material that came out that year, specifically like Magnolia and Fight Club and that type of thing. And I didn't know at the time that you can make a living expressing yourself in that sort of way. So Magnolia, that film specifically had a huge impact on me because I'd never seen anything that was remotely close to being that. You know, everything else was just kind of a standard story, and that film was just kind of like a mesh of all these different genres and a mesh of different emotions, and it was almost kind of comedic in a way at points, and sort of like a music video at other points. So that sort of made me realize the impact that film can have on someone. And then the other scenario was I think I was 16 at the time, and my brother was studying architecture at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and we had lived in New Jersey at the time, my family and I, when I was in high school. And I went to visit him, and a friend of his had this. He was in the film program at Pratt. It was just happened to be a friend of my brother's. But he had made this, and it sounds silly, but he had made this music video for I think a Limp Bizkit track, where he took every word of that music video and translated it into kind of something that was concrete, or a visual of some sort. So he illustrated every single word of that music video into a visual, and it was so messy and so fast, and the pacing was like fucking out of control, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, this guy's studying that's what he's studying to make a living. And even though it was Limp Bizkit, right? But it was a very inspiring moment. I think that moment was like a kind of a spark where I decided that I wanted to study this. I wanted to go down that path.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that happens to every filmmaker when they realize, like, wait, that's gonna be your career? Like, you're just playing. You're just creating. Like, what? It's crazy. You just realize that that's a possibility. And I mean, how could you not want to explore that?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, because you were born in Qatar, right? And then moved to the States.
Yeah.
How would you say like your multicultural background has influenced, your visual style?
Well, I don't think it's I mean, obviously it does influence my visual style, but I don't think it's something that is conscious, right? I think it's something that just happens to kind of subconsciously. And the fact that I'm Middle Eastern and that I grew up in Doha, Qatar. Well, I didn't really grow up there, but I lived there for 8 or 9 years, and then we go back and forth to the Middle East every summer. Definitely had something to do with the way I not approach visuals, but the way I look at life in general, right? Because I was always kind of alienated in America. I never felt like I was American, and I
Hmm.
still don't feel like I'm an American. So I kind of see the world in two different perspectives, in the kind of Middle Eastern way and the kind of American westernized way. So I think that it influences my thought process quite a bit and my perspective quite a bit, and that inherently becomes a part of your work, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have a similar experience in that I was born in Mexico City, moved to the States when I was six and a half. And yeah, it's going back and forth and suddenly living this like kind of splice of your identity and then kind of just learning how to adjust to that. And you're right, I guess it's not something you're constantly aware of, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of how you live your life. It's, I guess, any project you approach, then you just live it with the sensitivity. Yeah. Um, a question, I feel like filmmakers often get asked by students or aspiring filmmakers is what advice they would give. And that's something I want to ask both of you, but reframed a little. Like Steve, if you could sit down with yourself at the moment that you decided you wanted to be a DP, what would you tell yourself? Like, what advice would you give?
You mean knowing what I know now? So that if me
Yes.
from now,
Present day Steve, current Steve on the rocking chair sits down with like young Steve.
Young Steve with the afro. Just so you know, Steve has had that afro, and he was
Forever.
born with that
He
afro.
came out with an afro.
yeah. I don't know. I don't think you should look upon the past with regret. What I tell you a very interesting conversation that I had with it's a very interesting story. It might seem quite brutal, but I first of all I like Khalid. I get a lot of messages and people asking for advice. We're so connected right now through Instagram, through Messenger, through whatever. And I put myself out there. My email and my phone number is on my website. There's Instagram. It's not private. If anyone wants to contact me, they can. And actually, what I like to do is I like to call people up. There's not enough conversation going on. So if people direct message me, I will more often than not ask for their number and just call them out the blue. And it does. I don't think it matters where you are. It's a really nice thing to do, because when I was back, when I'd left film school, there was none of that. And I remember sending out literally hundreds of CVs and receiving no replies, and it was very demoralizing. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, so this one kid from a part of the world rang me, messaged me. I rang him back. He's like, "Oh my God, thank you." And he said, "I'm in a bind. I'm stuck doing really boring kind of infomercials and all that kind of stuff. And I want to make a break. I want to know what to do." And I said, "Well, I can say that he lives in Australia. He lives in a city in Australia." And he started to kind of talk about himself, and he had a partner and a child and all that kind of stuff. And I basically said to him, "How badly do you want to be a DP?" And he said, "Really, really badly." And I said, "Well, it sounds," but basically, he wasn't earning any money. His partner was earning money. He had his child, so he was in a bit of a quandary. And essentially, I said to him, "How badly do you want it?" And he said, "Badly." I said, "Well, I think you have to leave your family."
Yeah.
And he was kind of freaked out. And obviously, I wasn't telling him to leave his family, but I was trying to gauge how badly he wanted it. It was a weird little. You see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And essentially, he got into a point in his life where could he turn it around? So I guess the advice is, it's about your personal life. It's about relationships. It's about children. It's about all that kind of stuff. And I remember a time, I'm very open with my life. I remember a time many, many years ago when my old partner, it's a tricky story, but we were going to have triplets, and there was a miscarriage, and it was very sad and very, very traumatic. But I know that if those triplets had been born, my career would have stalled. I can tell you that right now. So do you see where I'm going with this again? And you've got to be so guided. You've got to be like an Exocet missile if you want to succeed as a DP. You can't let anything stay in your way. And I know what Khalid goes through, because he has a child, and it's the same thing that I go through with my child. And it's every time you go on a job and you leave that creature, it's heartbreaking. But what's the balance anyway?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a point that isn't spoken about much too. Is how badly do you want it, and what, like, for example, my priorities 20 years ago, or sorry, not even before I had my kid. My kid's 4 now, and 4.5, and my priorities back then were completely different than they are now. And it's funny because what Steve's saying is, how badly do you want this? I think about that all the time now, about what the balance is. Like in the year 2019, I was home for less than 40 days, which means that I saw less than, well, a little bit more than a month of my kid's 3-year-old life. And then at the beginning of this quarantine, I was home for 3 months, which was kind of a joy. And then since May, I've been back and forth between Barcelona and now I'm in Saudi Arabia. And I know that I'm going to be here until April, so I'm going to miss most of his 4-year-old life. But luckily, I have a wife that is very supportive and is happy to take the lead when I'm not home, and never complains about it. So I think that that you have to kind of find a balance between yourself and whoever your partner is, and if you end up kind of working it out.
Yeah.
Because at one point it becomes harder than anything in the world. And I remember Steve told me this. He's like, one day you're gonna leave home, and it's gonna be one of the hardest things you've ever done, no matter how much you love this game that you're in, right? No matter how much you love and adore what you do, but there's a creature that you've made that needs you to be home, and you're not home. So it's tough. It's really, really difficult. I mean, I would say that that's probably the most difficult thing right now. And I've been weighing pros and cons of ending my career, to be honest. I swear, it's like thing, because it's like now
Sorry, say again, Khalid.
No, I know I'm gonna be gone now for, well, excluding Christmas. I'll be home 2 weeks in Christmas, but then until the middle to end of April, working on this film. And that's a long time to be away from somebody. The longest I've been away from Sebastian was when I moved to Barcelona in May, and that was 3 months. And at the end of that 3 months, that last month was so difficult. It was so difficult because every time I would talk to him, he's old enough now to understand certain things. And every time I talked to him for the last month, he'd ask me, "Dada, when are you coming home?" So that was heartbreaking, and it was almost like I didn't even want to talk to him because I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah. But it's that whole I mean, it's essentially the balance between I don't know. It's in our nature to procreate, isn't it? We all need to procreate. No one wants to die all alone. That's essentially what it's about, isn't it? You know, when you're on your deathbed, Khalid, you know, do you want your child there? I'm serious. It's really like a really serious thing. But you want your child there. You want your loved ones there. Your grandchildren. You don't want to be all alone and just. But our industry is completely ill-equipped to keep families together.
Yeah.
You hear occasional stories about, you know, families traveling alone and traveling the world and all this kind of stuff, and I'm sure that happens. But generally, the mother or the father, depending who the DP is, or depending who works in the industry, will stay at home, and it's hard to get a balance. I mean, I look at some of the female DPs who have kids, and it's like, wow, holy shit,
Yeah.
that's beyond incredible. I don't even.
Even harder.
Even harder.
Sorry, guys, it's freezing in this hotel room. I've got to turn off the air. But go on.
No, I mean, it's interesting because I grew up in that world. I grew up with a dad who was off shooting for months and months and months at a time. And from a very young age, I've known I wanted to work in film. And I told myself from a very young age that meant I couldn't have a family. And that's just the way I've thought my entire life. Like, career, that's it. Family, like my parents fortunately were able, my dad brought us along for a few projects. We did travel, but there were also times where it was 6 months out of year and we would Skype once a week or something. So it is.
I mean, you know what, Maria? It's about freedom of choice, and essentially, you know, if I look at who I was back in 2009, 10, 11, 12, before my daughter was born, any job I got offered, it was just, I had absolute piecemeal freedom, whether it was a little music video, a passion piece, a big commercial, whatever. There was no money issues, no nothing.
Yeah.
And then the minute that child is born, everything changes. Suddenly you don't have that freedom, because suddenly, okay, maybe I've got to do that kind of shitty commercial to earn a bit of money to put in the trust fund, or to put in the bank, or pay the mortgage. And suddenly, actually, no, I'm going to do that job in London, so I don't have to be in LA for 3 weeks. So as soon as that child is born, your career path is altered massively. And so my main advice, if I was on set just a couple of weeks ago chatting to my trainee, a lovely girl called Ice, and saying just make sure that you focus on your career right now. Don't do anything silly. Don't even get into a relationship until you're sure. But it's a hard one, because sometimes it can seem like you're telling someone to be a goddamn film monk and not get into a relationship and not have any kids. But it's kind of true. It's a real tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to digress a little and talk.
Yes.
That's wonderful and deep as that got. But I want to talk, about the changes that we've seen in terms of the plethora of content out there. It used to be 20 years ago, you were kind of seeing the same things as everyone else. There was 1 or 2 movies released a week, 4 or 5 channels. And now I honestly feel like I spend more time scrolling through Netflix than actually picking something. It's incredibly overwhelming. So I guess I want to hear a little bit about how this has affected your careers, your choices, or just the way that you even digest films out there now.
You go, Khalid.
And we were talking about this the other day, right? How I almost just shut it off, because there's so much. And there's so much of the what was the question actually? Just
how has that affected you in terms of either taking projects on, realizing that they might just get lost in the void, or in terms of how you watch films? Just the whole concept.
To be honest, I don't necessarily think that I mean, it's definitely brought in quite a bit of opportunity. It's easier to be a filmmaker no matter what you want to do now than it has been ever. But at the same time, I don't think it actually affected the way I take on projects, because I've always been I've always had this three rule book, like three rule kind of thing that I live by, and I'll tell you what that is in a second. But I always feel like if there's a director that has something to say, not just the director that's making content, then I probably want to be involved in what he has to say, as long as I agree with it, obviously. But same with the DPs. You know, one of the reasons why I really respect Steve's work is because it has something to say, right? It's not just a pretty image, because anybody can put a pretty image together. It's like, what are the subconscious things that are going on in the artist's mind when you're actually putting that image together? Does that speak a language? Does that have a soul? Does that have a concrete sense to it, or is it just something that looks pretty? You know, so there is it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. But to get back to my three rules, and it maybe kind of answers the question that you asked before to Steve, but I always look at things in three ways, the projects, and this relates to commercials, to music videos, to films. Is one, is the project good? Is it creative? So in a case of a feature, is the script good? And the second rule is it, am I going to be surrounded by good people, or is it good contacts? Is it good are they smart, sophisticated people, or is it just a bunch of guys that just want to make anything happen, right? And then the third one's money. And it used to be one of those three things. Like if a project didn't have any of those three things, then I would pass without a question. And then little by little, it was like, it has to be one of those things. So if a project was this corporate job with just a corporate director, but it was a crazy amount of money, which of course at the beginning of my career I did tons of that, and it provided me a lot of money, and I ended up investing in a lot of things, in passion projects and equipment and things like that. And then little by little it became two of those three things. So it would be like, the script is really good, and this happens quite a bit. The script is really good. The director and the producer and the people that are involved in this are phenomenal artists, but the money is shit. So there's a balance there where I feel like now getting into features, I'm going to deal with that a lot. I'm going to deal with really good scripts, you know, with good directors that have a lot of potential and really want to say something with their film, not just making another Netflix film. But the money isn't going to be there. The money isn't going to be as good as it is in commercials, for example, you know. Or in another scenario, and I got this advice from a really established, successful DP. I won't say his name because I just for the hell of it, right? But he said, you're never going to get a great script, and I hope he's listening actually. But he said, you're never going to get a good script with a great director. It's going to be either one. He says, you're either going to get a script that is good, that you can see a little bit of potential in, but you don't really understand, or you're going to get a really good or you're going to get a great script with a director that you don't believe in. And it sounds insane, but because you look at this person's body of work and you're like, how did you not think that's, because he's worked with top level, like some of the best, most influential directors in the world, and you look at it and you say, how did you not see something in that script? You know, and he said, no, when I read it, I actually didn't even understand it. I had to put full trust in this director that he's going to pull it off.
Right. So is he someone that lives by the director over script, would you say?
In that scenario, on those three projects that we had discussed at the time, yeah. He didn't, one of them, he didn't understand the script so much. The other one, he's like, okay, I see potential in it, but it's just another drama. and the third one I don't remember, but he just put all the trust in these directors that they're going to make something different.
Yeah. Wow. Steve, what about you, going back to just the oversaturation of content?
No, you could. I was thinking about this, and I don't know, you look back in the past, and you look at the old model. You look at the way that the model of cinema has changed. Cinema used to be multiple theatres in various towns and cities screening a film. The block, whether it was Gone with the Wind or Citizen Kane or whatever, Atticus Finch, and then the blockbusters came, and suddenly cinemas were saturated with Jaws and Star Wars and E.T. and those kind of films, and then they get reviewed, and I don't know, I wouldn't have a clue what it was like to be a DP or director in those times, but I would imagine that part of the pleasure, part of the aftermath of making the film would be to see your film getting praise in the press. And there wouldn't have been that many films reviewed because not that many films were made. So opening a newspaper, whether it's the Guardian in London or the New York Times or the LA whatever, would have been an incredible experience, I think. And that same kind of model maybe changed with the multiplexes. More films were made, more saturation, but essentially it's the same thing. And now that model has just vanished out the window, and I always look upon, maybe it's me and my kind of mind, but I look at films of, say, the 70s, 80s, 90s, the classics, and I think, I don't know about you, but do most people know who won Oscars in certain years? What won the best films? I don't know. That whole thing's gone. But at the same time, I wouldn't know which film won the Oscar just 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so our minds have been just completely obliterated of having film as sort of gospel templates, I guess. It's a strange one. And I said this to you yesterday, the other day, that you load up a Netflix app, and the logo comes on, and then you're greeted with dozens and dozens of thumbnails, and each thumbnail represents years of a person's life, and that's all it is now. It's just a little tiny thumbnail on an iPhone or an iPad. Years and years of someone's heart, blood, and soul condensed into that you just, I can't be bothered with that. Oh, look, there's another genre film made by Amazon. I don't know. It's difficult. But I remember as a child, each film that was released was an event. Going to the cinema was an event. It's tough. You have to adapt. That's all I'm going to say as well.
Yeah. What would you say to what Khalid said, his comment about the script versus director? Has that been something that's true in your experience?
No, I mean, I think a lot of it it's to do with just, I remember my first film, tiny film, 300 grand. Which
film is this, Steve?
Kissing Candice. And it was a film that I didn't even have to read. I knew I was going to do it because I trusted the director. The director was an amazing woman called Aoife McArdle, who had a very, very dark and unique and exciting vision of a version of life. And it was like, not even a question. I thought, I have to do this film. And it was a very tough film to make. And sometimes that happens. It's a weird one. I've said yes to films on a whim. I've gone into a weird kind of, it's a hard one, choosing the films. You have to be extraordinarily careful.
It's one of the toughest things, one of the toughest decisions.
It's the Memento story, the story of Memento. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but I heard this from someone. The
Yeah,
number
I
of
think.
DPs who turned Memento down
Yeah,
is phenomenal. 30, 40 DPs turned it down. But imagine you're a DP, and here's this little I don't know what the budget was, 5, 6, 7 million.
I think it was the following actually, Steve, not Memento, right?
No. I'm talking the following he made in London. The following he made.
It was like
Yeah,
over
that
the
was
weekend in London.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's his
that was
first
tiny.
film. Right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
Memento, imagine, Khalid, you get a script, and it's this British guy, and you read it, and it's like, okay, what the hell is going on? It's the past, but it's the present. It's filmed in reverse. It's black and white in color, and everyone under the sun turned it down, but Wally Pfister didn't turn it down, and it's that whole kind of sort of historical thing of this amazing relationship that may or may not have happened. But I'd love to have been one of those DPs reading Memento, and
Yeah.
It's that whole thing. But you don't really know. No one really knows. Agents like to think they know. DPs like to think they know, but no one really knows.
No.
And there's very few films out there that are truly. The last time it happened with me, actually, and I read the script and I saw it. It was with Mandy. I read the script for Mandy, this Nick Cage film, and I thought, holy shit, this is incredible. And all the references that came out, the lookbook that came with it, knowing who the director was, I didn't get it, and it went to Ben Loeb, and Ben Loeb fucking killed it. It's an amazing film.
You're talking about Mandy?
Yes.
Yeah, Mandy's so out there. It's crazy. Yeah. And then you did a Nick Cage film. What was it, 2 years ago?
Let's move on.
Okay, next topic. Steve kind of brought this up earlier in terms of, being connected to Instagram and having access to cinematographers and just, being able to be in contact with them. It's insane what we have in our pockets, what it can connect to, the resources. So I want to touch a little bit about either how you have used that to your advantage. I know, Khalid, we touched on how there's YouTube videos for Learn Anything. So are there specific resources that you would recommend to filmmakers?
Well, are you asking me or Khalid?
Let's start with Khalid.
Okay.
Or you, if he doesn't want to go.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking because it's a blessing and a curse. Because I mentioned this yesterday, right? But like I'm prepping the film that I'm on now, and anytime anything that you used to say we can Google it, now you can YouTube it. There's a video for like literally everything. You can Google you can YouTube anything. It's kind of outrageous, and I discovered this during quarantine. I didn't realize the power of YouTube until I had time on my hands. And I had to like whip myself into shape, like physical shape, and not having a gym, not having a trainer, I would just type it in on YouTube, like anything, and there'd be tons of videos on it. So now it's the learning process has become, I don't know. It's so accessible. And my wife and I talk about this, about if we want to, say my son becomes a DP, which he probably will. But if he does, would I send him to university or to college to study it? And to be completely honest, I myself dropped out of 3 film schools, and that was before. I think YouTube had just started to come out, and the internet had just started to become this thing. But now the technical sides of it are you would have to be blind to not see it. It's so easy. Figuring out how to technically light something or how to frame something. It just becomes, if you want to copy and paste, it's very simple. You can copy and paste. You know what I'm saying? And even story as well.
It used to be mythical. It used to be how do they do that? And when you're on the peripheries, it is like that. I remember, you know, it's the only time I've actually done it. It's the only time I've sort of rung a DP. Maybe I've done it a couple more times, but there's one pivotal promo that I remember looking at, and it was for the Doves. I mention this promo all the time. It's a Lynn Ramsey music video for Black and White Town, and I remember looking at the raw beauty of it and thinking, how was it done? And I rang the DP, Tom Vincent Townend, and he told me, and it was like, that's just ridiculously easy, and it was so mythical. It looks so difficult, but it's not. Khalid's right.
Yeah.
But I think I call it like a democratization of knowledge, and I think it's a good thing, but I think it should be balanced. You know, I think it's good in that for young kids of all colors, races, creeds, all around the world, to be able to look at interviews with DPs, look at workshops is beyond incredible. But I think the misuse can come with a sort of a humbleness and a humanity that's required to being on film set. I mean, as a DP, you control you've got quite a powerful role there, and you're responsible for a crew, the grips, the sparks, the camera team. Your mood and your temperament has a massive say on how a film set is run. If you get angry and you're in a bad mood, that will spread like a disease, and it's not a pleasant thing. So I think going through the camera ladder and learning for years, not 20, 30 years, I'm talking 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and sitting there and learning and observing and getting to know a set, getting to be on a set, learning about the hierarchy. I think it's massively important, and that democratization of knowledge may be draining that as a resource. I still think being a trainee for a good 2-3 years, a clapper loader 2 or 3 years, a focus puller. It's not to say that you shouldn't be able to break through that barrier. If you've got talent and you're racing through, God bless you. Go, you know, Godspeed, and I wish you all the best. But anyway, yeah, that's what I think.
No, I see what you're saying. It's almost like developing that reverence for the set. It is crucial. It's yeah. I want to dive into this art versus commerce thing that we brought up.
Okay.
You know, it's really broad. It's a term that could be defined in many ways, but in film, it kind of art, commerce on either side of a scale. You know, there's a balance, and they're dependent on each other. So, Steve, could you just talk a little bit about your thoughts on this concept and whether those thoughts have shifted throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, all I can do is I can say it as a story, and there's 2 stories where one story ended in joy and happiness, and the other story that it ended in me literally in tears, and it's the way it's been. So, you know, the positive story is you know, me getting approached to do a massive commercial with some very good directors for a hotel brand. Pay is just full, big job, massive, all the toys. But it's a commercial, you know. And then in amongst all this, I get asked to do a tiny little music video that's minuscule, shot around LA, like 10 days of my time, no money. And I gamble and go with the music video because the music, there's something about the script, there's something about what I'm reading that just is just turning my mind on, and I'm drawn to it. I have to follow the art and just dispense with the commerce. and I do well. I do the music video, and it's a big success, and it takes my career up a notch, and that's how it should be, you know. Yeah, but there have been times where I've gone down that same road and it's failed. It's absolutely failed, because I don't. I was saying this the other day. It's like a scale, art and commerce. You know, there's like art films, music, low budget music videos, short films, and then there's commercials. And it's the same with films. There's a film made by Marvel, Disney, whoever, and there's a very, very sort of, there's an A24 film, an Annapurna film, a beautiful David Lowery film, whatever. So it's hard. But the other story is I chose the commercial, and the music video went on to be very beautiful. There's a dozen stories like that, and you're always having to balance
I'll
it.
always remember that story, Steve. I'll always remember that, because I remember when we had first met, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kind of triggered a lot of things for me.
Yeah.
But because I was like, wow, they're spending down a lot of money.
Yeah. But here's the thing: if you're, I think you're the same, Khalid. If you have various pencils in your diary for commercial, money, and they're all there, and it's just another commercial. If you get that little script by that director that you love, and we all know who they are.
Yeah.
And it's that little gem. There's no question. You will brush all that money aside, no matter what. Correct?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think there's a point too where, you know, now I'm transitioning into features, and I know it's similar to how, like, I started out in documentary, and not even really intentionally. It was kind of something that I just fell into. But I started out in documentary and news. Like, I worked for the United Nations because I never wanted to be broke. I never wanted to be completely fucking broke trying to make films. I just didn't. I thought, look, I'm dropping out of film school. I've got to make a living. You know, I'm not dropping out of film school and not making a living. You know, that's just, I will not allow myself to do that. So I got a job at the United Nations that was proposed to me, working for UN TV and working for Press TV and all these Associated Press and all sorts of kind of media outlets at the base at the United Nations headquarters. And so many great things came out of that, but that was kind of my commerce, right? I made money that way. And then I took that money and I very strategically placed it in certain areas like passion projects and owning equipment and renting equipment and you know, all the things that kind of try to take it to the next step. And then little by little, I couldn't leave the UN until I knew for a fact that I can make a living. And of course, it wasn't like my standards weren't very high at the time, right? It was just making a living, meaning like I could pay rent, I could pay food. I didn't want to leave the UN until I knew 100% that I can do it freelancing. Because freelancing is a tough one, right? When you're first starting freelancing, it's like, holy fuck. If I don't work next month, it's okay. If I don't work the next month, okay. But at one point, when this is what a lot of people don't talk about, it's similar to what happened during the quarantine. It has nothing to do with the money. It has everything to do with your headspace. Because the first month of quarantine, I was like, this is fucking great. I love it. Even the second month, I was like, this is fantastic. You know, everybody's everybody's in this together, you know. Like I'm not working because I'm no good. I'm not working because no one's working. And it helped me rekindle my relationship with a few friends, and it helped me spend time with my family and blah blah blah, all the cliche things that you hear, right? But as the months go by, it starts to get to your head. It starts to get to your psyche. And that's where it becomes, I got this advice too from a I don't even remember who it was, but he said an artist can't be an artist if you're worried about making money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And little by little, it was like, how much longer is this going to go? And I talked to my agents and I'd say, have you heard anything? Is it up and running again? And they're like, no, we've heard July. And I remember hearing July, like it was, if it went to July, I'd never survive, you know? And now we're in what? We're in October, and it's still going on. It's still it's still going on, and it's gonna continue going on. But during those months that I wasn't working, it got to a point where I didn't know what to do anymore, and it got to my psyche.
Yeah.
You know, and it was fucking brutal. It was really, really brutal for about 2 to 3 weeks, and I didn't want to get in that situation. I didn't want to get in that situation when, and that's why I took that shitty job at the UN. And that's why I took a lot of really shitty jobs, is because I didn't want to, as long as I was working, then at least my headspace is right. At least I can think as an artist, because I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay rent next month, or I'm not worried about how I'm going to do this next month. So yeah, I've got, I mean, I've got a lot to say about this topic, right? I can go on forever. So
it's a weird one because, you know, not the whole art versus commerce thing. They can't, one can't live without the other. It's impossible. They both rely on each other. If one dies, the other dies. It's that simple, I think.
Yeah.
You know, of course. People
at the end of the day, they're entertainment, right? Like what is a film if it's not a commercial success? It's nothing. Like if it doesn't become something that people see, then what is, you've made a film for yourself? And you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but it's true. I mean, you have to make a film that, even if it's a small niche of an audience, but at least it has a market.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know, going back to sort of commercials, that, you know, there is pleasure. There's when you do a good commercial, and there's an immense pleasure, especially those beautiful narrative commercials, the commercials where you're really experimenting with visuals. There's immense pleasure there, but there's always a part of you that is, you know, you're working for the man. and that can be quite draining. And oftentimes, you know, there's that classic thing. I'm sure you've been there, Khalid, where you agree to do a job and it changes without you. No one's told you, but it changes, and you're like, oh my god, and you just, you know, yeah.
100%.
But it's about yeah. I mean, it's that story that who's is it Erin?
Erin Wild.
Yeah.
Yes, my friend.
Yeah. That story of yeah. Anyway, being that's how stubborn I am.
I guess a question for both of you is, if you treat a project that is a commercial, just commerce driven, but you treat it as art and you go into it thinking of it as art, does it become art?
Well, I mean, you know what? I honestly, I have this drive. Maybe it's really, really stupid and naive, but every job that I do, I sincerely believe that going in there, I'm going to do something incredible, and I can somehow create images that will transform this piece from whatever it is into something incredible. I genuinely have that. It's the child in me, and I think it has. I think that has to be there. The minute the minute I go in, I couldn't imagine starting a job going, oh God, this is just a job. You have to go into it believing something, that you're going to create something stunning and beautiful and different and interesting and experimental. And I do genuinely believe that with every job I do.
Yes, but Steve, also remember that I've ruined my reputation over this, about caring too much. You know, I've told you this story many times, and how much do you care? There's times where the production company on a commercial is looking at it as a money job, and then you come in. I swear, I've been labeled as a really aggressive guy that just wants to make a piece of art, and I'm like, what on earth is that? What I'm overly enthusiastic, too enthusiastic, and I've
Misplaced
harmed.
passion and love, Khalid. Misplaced passion and love.
No, but it's you've got to pick your battles. I think there's a time and place to give it every single thing that you have and every ounce of energy that you have, and there's a time and place where you can sit back and just say, I'm gonna do my best, and this is gonna be the best version of this as it's gonna be. But no matter what, no matter how good of a version it is, it's always gonna sit at this level. It'll never be that level. And there's no harm in that. For me, there's no harm in that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something so lovely about what you just said about, because I know who you are, Khalid. I know there's a dragon's fireball inside you.
Yeah, but with good intentions, with good intentions.
No, of course.
And sometimes that good intention doesn't come across.
But not everyone is on the same wavelength as you.
Yeah.
And I was there many years ago, and it's terrifying, isn't it? Absolutely terrifying. Sure. But yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting speaking to the agents and my one of my agents who reps me in the UK and Europe. I love her for her honesty. She's so freaking honest, and it's such a rare quality. And she will say, I remember her saying to me many years ago, just be really careful. The reputation thing, and the blood drains from your face. You want to die. You want to shrivel up into a ball. You're embarrassed. What have I done? But you have to move on. And it's interesting also hearing the stories of other DPs and how they deal with it, and how mature they are, and how sensible they are, and how they don't let the fireball erupt of passion and beautiful fury. It's all everyone's very, very different. I think maybe me and Khalid are too similar in certain ways.
Well, Khalid, I want to talk a little bit about your stills photography, and if anyone watching isn't familiar with his stills, please go check them out because they're stunning. And I mean, clearly it's something you're gifted at, and you've mentioned that people want to rep you, but you've made the choice to shoot stills as a passion and not turn it into commerce. And I just want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, there were times where I feel like I am really in love with not just the image, but the process of making an image, a stills image, and the power of a still image, capturing a moment in time, but also manipulating it. There's so many different kind of ways of approaching it, but in terms of representation, I've been asked by a lot of kind of fairly successful agencies and a lot of really kind of successful photographers. Why on earth would you not be represented as a photographer? And the main reason is because I don't want it to destroy my hobby. I don't want it to become a job. If it becomes a job, then I won't enjoy it. Maybe there's a 1% chance that if that project becomes something that I'm not happy with, that it could destroy one of my only hobbies. Because I mean, my hobbies are so limited. There's not many things that I really, really enjoy doing, and shooting stills is definitely one of them. So it's really hard because I know that I can do it, and I know that I can do it quite well. But I don't want to ruin it.
I thought you enjoyed watching Housewives of New Jersey, Khalid.
I love that too. I love that.
You've got the calendar and everything, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. I love. I know the Housewives of Miami actually now is the new one.
Okay.
Now one's even better, Steve. I'll send you my favorite episode.
No, I mean that
But
makes sense.
no, I talked to Steve about this because at one point, another thing that was like, oh, Khalid is this wild card. You know, I wanted to figure out a way to work with a collective of artists as still photographers, whereas I wanted to kind of start a collective where you take these directors and these DPs that are clearly very gifted and clearly very qualified to shoot still photography in the editorial space, in the portraiture space, and in all sorts of mediums, right? But that quickly got shut down because I gave it thought, and I gave it some real thought, and I spoke to a few agents about what the space would actually look like, and I don't want it to take away from one, my career as a cinematographer, and two, I don't want it to destroy my passion for stills.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, actually.
No, it absolutely does. I mean, now I'm curious, Steve, do you have any hobbies that, kind of something that is different than, filmmaking that?
Not really.
No.
Not really. I mean, to be honest, look, I do have hobbies. I don't know. I mean, I guess the word hobby to me is a strange word, but when I work, it's all encompassing. The travel, the intensity, whatever. And when I'm home, I don't know. I have interests. My daughter's definitely a hobby. My lovely girlfriend Cherie, she's definitely I wouldn't call her a hobby, but it's something that I'm someone that I love very much and very passionate about. Yeah, I just like to do my thing. Bike rides, walks.
The simple pleasures.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
People that don't know, Steve was one of probably the only DPs that I know personally that would, like, the amount that not just that he works, but he puts out consistently good work. I mean, I mean it every time I say this. I think Steve's one of the most gifted cinematographers living today. I really do. I believe that. And Dan had this conversation where we're like, when Steve gets that opportunity to stop, he's gonna crash really hard, because it was just like, we were just going and going and going, and it was just like every single project was just better than the other or different than the other, and it was really mind blowing. And I'm actually, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but how did you deal with the quarantine, and how did you deal with stopping? Because you went
I had a breakdown. Yeah.
No, come on.
No, I'm serious.
Really?
I'm serious. Yeah, I'm seeing a therapist. It
Because
was really tough. I'm not gonna
handle the time. You couldn't handle being
No,
away
it was just. I'll be honest with you. So when it all happened, I had a really good job lined up, and it got cancelled, and you're watching the news, and you're keeping abreast of things, and suddenly countries are banned, airports shut. It was a very, very, very unique experience. So a very new experience, and there's no. You enter a tunnel and you don't know when it's going to end, because no one on the planet had been there before, and you think, what will happen, and will there be an industry? And I think for a month or two, definitely a month or two, no one really knew, and I was seriously, I mean, I remember speaking to friends about this, but I was thinking, should I retrain and become a teacher? What will happen? Do I become a delivery driver? I mean, no one literally didn't know.
No, I thought the same thing. I swear.
Yeah, because eventually, if this thing goes on for, would this deep quarantine go on for a year or 2 years, and no one knew. There were very. I didn't really like to talk to that many people, but the few people I did talk to, it was, this will be 2 months tops, and then it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Utter bullshit, obviously. And then there were people, this is going to be a year or two. And I'll be honest with you, when it did start to open up, when the phone did start to ring again, it was, I was a bit, whoa. But no, the trauma of it, the absolute trauma of it was intense for me. Because I absolutely love and adore what I do. And you know, I look at what's going on in the world, and it's not just DPs, it's just with humanity. The little tiny stories out there of COVID. You know, I was on set the other day in Spain, and we were shooting this. I was shooting a lovely Sprite commercial with a very, very lovely director, Nico, and we were shooting this scene where some girls were playing rugby, and there was an extra sitting around, and she was sort of looking at me with the camera, and eventually she had the nerve to come up to me and say, did you go to film school to do what you're doing? And I said, well, yeah, it's not just film school though, it's a lot of hard work. And I said, why are you asking? And she said, well, you know, I spent 3 or 4 years doing tourism business management at college, and I started a business when I was very young. This is a very young girl, and it collapsed. It collapsed just after I started it 2 months, and now I don't know what to do. And that's COVID. It broke my heart. This young girl, just she'd given 4 years of her life to her passion. You know, business, tourism, and management, and she started a business that young, and it got ripped apart from her, and now she hasn't got a clue what to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of those stories, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's filmmakers actually, like focus pullers and electricians that I know that don't trust this business anymore and have left. And I bet that that exists everywhere in the entertainment business. How many people have lost their jobs, have lost their trust?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely won't name names, but I was chatting to someone very recently, a guy who I trust, and he was saying that a friend of his, COVID and the industry affected him so much. This was a focus puller. He committed suicide. So there's really, really, really dark things going on, you know. Yeah. But I think beyond, even before COVID, we're all, I believe we're all just a hair away from being the homeless man in the street. We are.
No, you know what's funny is the director that I'm working with now he directed a documentary called That Which I Love Destroys Me. And there's a segment in the film, it's a fucking phenomenal film about two Delta Force guys but that have PTSD. The film deals with PTSD, but there's a section in the film where one of the characters, a real character, is talking about humanity, and he was saying how you can take anybody, any man, any woman in the world, and you take their house away and they become depressed, right? You take their house and their wife away and then they become suicidal. You take their house, their kid, their wife, their livelihood, and now he's a serial killer, you know? No. And no. I felt that because I really resonated with that, because during COVID, I have a really hard time with my thoughts, right? Like if I was in solitary confinement, I would fucking go crazy. I would go fucking crazy. I really would. And I had a really hard time during the first kind of part of COVID because I didn't know what to do with my thoughts. I was like, are we going to get up and running in a few weeks, or are we going to stay here for a month? So for the first 2 weeks, it was a little bit kind of trying to figure, no one knew what the hell was going on, right? The whole world shut down in a week. Within a week, the whole world changed. But so I picked this thing. I was like, fitness has always been something that I'm interested in. And, at one point in my life, believe it or not, I was in really good shape. And then little by little, shooting the film industry, and the constant travel made me gain weight, and it made me like unflexible, and it made me just like so out of shape. I couldn't hike up a mountain. I couldn't run a 5K. It was like things like that, where it used to be easy, smoking a pack a day, things, just all the things that people don't talk about, right? And I swear, this is so true. And during quarantine, I got in shape. Like I was like one of those people. Like there's one of those people that like, picked up a Peloton before and kicked myself into shape for 3 months.
Yeah.
And now I still do it. Like even though I'm not physically working out, but at least I'm being careful with what I eat, and it's helped me see, or count my blessings, I'd say.
Yeah. It is. I think we are all very fragile though, and COVID was just an amplification. It was almost like, I feel like as humans we go through life getting gentle electric shocks, children and this and that and deaths and whatever. But COVID was a real, and it I think. I think the ramifications have yet to be seen. I don't mean to be a doomsayer or anything.
No, I agree.
But when the dust settles and the millions of people who have lost businesses and had to watch their fathers die on a Zoom call, etc., the ramifications are going to be just horrendous. And I think
the amount of debt that people are in.
Not just death at all. I think
debt.
Oh yes, no, yeah. Well, just businesses being lost, families being lost. I mean, think about what you went through, Khalid, and you're lucky. You live in a very you have a family. You have a child, loved ones around you, friends, savings, and COVID affected you for a few weeks. The industry came back, and you grabbed onto it with your coattails, and you've earned some money, and you're working again. It's the same with me. And now, Matt, the story that you've just told everyone about what happened in your head. Imagine if it didn't. Imagine you were a restaurateur. And you built up a beautiful restaurant in Greenwich Village for 15 years, and COVID happens, bang, it's shut. I mean, it's those stories times literally a million on a global scale. That's COVID. Anyway.
Yeah. I just processing. It's what you're saying and just how fragile society and then us as humans are.
Yeah.
And you're right. I don't know what the PTSD that we're gonna have as a world will be.
And to be honest, there is a message to be said to a lot of the filmmakers that are out working. I'm not flaunting it. I'm trying to keep it as below the radar as possible, because I know that there's a tremendous amount of people that are still not working and still haven't worked since March.
Yeah.
So flaunting it on social media is one, extremely pretentious, but it's also heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're going down a whole different avenue now of humbleness and humanity and social media and what it means. That's a whole other story, I think. Can I ask you something, Marie? Are we going to let some people in?
People are in. I have some questions. Let's dive into those. This came in through email yesterday, but someone wanted to know that in a world where most available cameras for starting cinematographers are DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, what should their approach be when using these devices to really make the image stand out?
I mean, this conversation is just it's 10 years ago. It's so dated, and to be honest, I am. Oh man, there's nothing to say about this. You know, there's a 5D Mark II that you can pick up, and it doesn't do the image that comes out of it is not that much different than what comes out of an Alexa. You know, it really isn't that much difference. I think if you have something to say, and like I said it, if you have something to say and you really want to say it, you will do it regardless. The camera is the most irrelevant object at the moment. You know, like I don't believe a DP is even a cameraman. You know, they're not even. I mean, being a camera operator is like 1% of what we do. You know what I'm saying? And learning cameras is like, that's like you don't even need a penny to do that. You need 1 week to learn how to do it, and then go and do it. And
I have this thing where because Khalid is extremely technical, and I have this little joke that I often do with Khalid where he'll put a post on Instagram and it's the most technical thing, and I'll literally just make complete nonsense up, and I love giving Khalid a little slap around the face.
It's really good
because I literally
really I always look out for those comments. No, but for me it's like, it's more about the photography side of it. There is some, like, for example, I bought this Hasselblad camera that the aesthetic of it is really impressive, what it physically looks like. And it's this $10,000 camera, and every lens is $5,000. You end up spending $20,000 on this thing, right? And at first, when I first picked it up and I started shooting with it, I hated everything about it. The lenses are a 3.5 t-stop or f-stop, and you know, the autofocus is inexistent, and there's like a summary, pages and pages of things about it that I didn't like. Where you can pick up a camera for $1,000, like a Fuji, for example, and it's autofocus functions, and it shoots 20 frames a second in stills, and it has 14 stops of dynamic range, and it shoots DNG or RAW or whatever. And I'm like, you know, so I posted some stuff about that, and Steve got really really offended. but the reason why I bring that up is, and the reason why I actually post that this is this specific camera, is for two reasons, really. One is that to illustrate that here's this camera with this image versus, you know, if you go down on my post from 4 or 5 years ago, there's images that look equally the same, that were shot on cameras that came out 10 years ago or 5-6 years ago. And there's really not that big of a difference. But at the same time, that camera has taught me how to slow down, how to really think. I relate it to shooting film, and the reason why I haven't sold it, as much as I hate it, no, I don't want to use the word hate, because it's too aggressive. But as much as I dislike it, I do like the aspects of it that you're behind the camera, and you have to think before you click. You got to think about everything before you click, because it's just not fast. It's not a fast camera. So in a way, it's like shooting film again. So I've kept it for that reason, but I probably will end up selling it because, you know, I could just shoot film at that for a much cheaper price range.
Well, yeah, it sounds like it's like the reverence for the process that you're keeping it for.
Yeah,
like a meditation.
I've actually never owned I've owned one camera in my life. Marie.
One still camera?
I brought a Pentax K1000 when I was 17, and
that
I lost it. I lost it somewhere. Might have lost it in Thailand somewhere, maybe like 15 years ago, and I've never owned a camera since. I think I get enough by working on a film set and making stills, and to be honest, I like to enjoy moments as they happen with my eyes, and people are taking photographs all the goddamn time. It's the whole cliche of going to a concert and 10,000 people with iPhones watching a concert. It's, you know, that's my thing. But you know, I also have respect for someone like Khalid, who I see his stills, and obviously they're very beautiful. But I just that thing that just doesn't interest me for some reason. It's a strange one,
Yeah,
you
it's a
know.
super strange one. Because I
Yeah,
think he would be like he would be a Gregory Crewdson. You know, he would
That's
be an amazing. No, really, because he's got such a distinctive way of lighting and framing and kind of putting together an image.
maybe I just wouldn't be able to sort of transfer what I do into a still. I don't know. It's a weird one. But
Do you remember when I offered that up to you? I was like, you know what? I'm gonna send you this. I think it was the Hasselblad. I said, this thing's fucking driving me crazy. I'm gonna send it to you. You remember that conversation?
yeah.
I would be so curious because you don't really need to do even more work. Just take stills on the film set that you're on.
It's true. It's very true, actually. Yeah.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
don't know. I
Like
appreciate
there's
there's
times
a
where the
lot of
film-
it. There's a lot of great Instagram pages. You know, Veril and numerous others, and there's some beautiful stuff, and I really appreciate it. You
Yeah.
know, but yeah, just not my bag. Not my bag. So anyway.
Someone just asked, do you believe that you could be a high-level filmmaker, such as director, producer, or DP, while living in a city that's not LA, New York, or London?
Yes.
Do you think you can?
Yeah, I do. I do. Now, yes. 10 years ago, no. 'Cause if you're gonna put out a piece of work and that piece of work is different. I mean, I can't remember which film it was, but I saw a film recently that was so different. That was completely different than anything that I've ever seen before. And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I haven't had this feeling in a long time." Because in 1999, there was like, from 1999 until about 2006 or 2007, I'd say. Maybe it was because I was younger and I was naive. I don't know, but it just seemed like there was creative content that was coming out all the time, things that were new and fresh, and discovering new ways of telling a story or a new kind of way of describing a story, or a completely fresh sensibility. And I haven't seen that in such a long time. So I really do think that if, like, for example, the first question that you asked me about living in Doha, you know, that brought a perspective to me personally, that a sensibility that I don't necessarily think somebody that lived in New York or New Jersey or the East Coast would have had, for sure. So again, learning how to do it, the technical sides of it, it was really not that difficult, you know. And no matter how great an image looks, no matter how incredible the image looks, it's not going to make a good film. The film that I saw, oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue, but it wasn't shot well. It was shot very poorly, actually.
Tootsie? Was it Tootsie?
No. Was it? I don't remember. But look, what you said yesterday, Steve, how irrelevant we are in this space, in the feature landscape. We're completely irrelevant people, because it does not matter. We don't matter, because if you have and this is something that I'll remember for the rest of my life, a pretty image will not make a good film. And that's why when I'm picking and making decisions in prep, I'm making decisions, and sometimes I know that they're not the right visual decision. For example, on this movie, you know, there's locations that are visually almost impossible to light. They're really difficult to light. And if I was on a commercial, I'd speak up and say something like, "This can't happen." You know, the technical sides of my brain will start working about the reasons why we can't shoot here or we shouldn't shoot here. But on this film, I know it serves the story really well, and I know that the image will suffer, but the story will come across, and the actress will have freedom. And you know, I can't go into details about what the specific thing is, but I'm sure you've been there, Steve.
All I would say about the whole city thing would be, you know, I look at people who are striving to enter the industry. And I think it's, there's a word that gets bandied around. It's called luck, and it's a strange word to sort of try and rationalize. But there are ways to make luck. And look, if you're a kid growing up in I don't know, Chicago, which doesn't really have a film industry, the chances of you becoming successful aren't going to be that great. But if you move to LA, you've made luck for yourself, so you can create luck. And that's my opinion on the whole thing.
Yes, but also 10 years ago, Steve, there was, like, for example, before I started traveling, before I understood the way the world worked, before I got a grasp, even a small grasp of the way the world worked, I would think that, oh, I can never move to, I'm in Saudi Arabia now. I never moved to Saudi Arabia. There's not artful people there, or there's just not an art scene in the Midwest. I can't live there. But I'm in Saudi Arabia, in one of the smallest places, the city, the town that I'm in, and there's one of the people that we're working with is like a really interesting person. So I would say that there are interesting people with something to say everywhere.
No,
And as long as you surround yourselves with those people. I mean, look at Solomon is a great example of that. Solomon started his career in Dubai. That's where I met Solomon. I met Solomon in Dubai, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I can't believe this fucking genius, this incredible artist, is living in this city that's like an extremist Muslim kind of town. I couldn't believe it. And he grew up there and stayed there until he was like in his 20s.
You're right, but I don't think Sol's career would be what it is right now if it had stayed there. The fact is, I think, you look at a modern filmmaker like Sol, who has benefited through being in one of the three pivotal cities, New York, LA, and London. They're the three pivotal cities. He's benefited from being in New York, and he's actually also benefited from the filmmaking as a community that has grown through technology, things like Vimeo and Instagram. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Sol is a prime example of a young modern filmmaker having the best of kind of both worlds. But I do believe you're right in what you say. Everywhere you go, the smallest towns, the smallest villages, whatever, there'll be creativity. But in order to have the potential to explore that and nurture that, you've got to go to a big city. You have to.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm sort of contradicting myself in a way, because like Susan, my wife, and I have been talking about, well, she's my fiance. I keep calling her my wife, but we've been together so long that we may as well be wife and husband. But we live in Manhattan. We've lived in Manhattan for many years, and we've been talking about that. Like, I don't really need to be based in Manhattan anymore. I think that I could be anywhere. But
yeah, you could be in Bermuda. You could live in Bermuda, Khalid. As long as you have decent Wi-Fi.
Out of all the places in the world, he's got to pick Bermuda. I love it. And with a British accent, it sounds too sophisticated for me. Bermuda.
As they say in Brooklyn, Bermuda.
No, but in all honesty, the like, our son is 5 years old, or 4 years old. Sorry, he's 4, and the when he's around other kids that are not from big cities, he is tremendously ahead of them because of the amount of exposure he's around. He's around so much exposure of advertisement and media and people talking different languages, people that look completely different. Like, I remember when and this is something that I'll always remember. My brother will probably remember this. My sisters will probably remember this. My mom always remembers this. But the first time that I saw a guy with red hair, I went fucking crazy. I hysterically cried because I thought it was an alien, and I was probably 6 years old or 5 years old or something like that, because I just I was in Doha, Qatar, and Doha, Qatar at the time, for anybody that doesn't know, was like where I am now. It was like a village. There was nothing. There were no skyscrapers. It wasn't westernized whatsoever. It was just this small desert kind of town that my parents are doctors and they worked at hospitals there in a small place called Doha, Qatar, that now everybody knows. But at the time, no one knew what it was. So what I'm saying is that there is an exposure that you will get, and it's a subconscious exposure. I think it's not something that you really think about, but your mind's constantly running because of the advertising that you're seeing, because of the people that you're seeing, because of the conversations that you're overhearing, because of the I don't know, the freedom of speech, for example. The fact that you could say whatever the fuck you want anytime you want is really phenomenal. You know, I mean, my son hears me cursing like all the time, and sometimes I stop myself. But look, if he doesn't hear it from me, he's going to hear it from somebody else, and I don't mind that. I think it's fine. I think it's okay, as long as he's got a structure of like a strong core of values and morals. I think he'll come around, just like I did, just like you did, Steve.
Next question, Marie.
We'll do one more because we've been going for an hour and a half, but let's just jump into one last question. Cesar Moore is wondering how you both manage the networking part of the job, which I'm gonna just say I'm just thinking he's talking about, you know, meeting directors or the schmoozing thing of it all.
I've always been a fan of letting the work speak for itself. And as far as reaching out to directors, like, not that I've never reached out to a director, I have, but I know DPs that will reach out to directors. I mean, that's what they do. They just reach out to directors, or like production designers reach out to directors. But I wanted to, and I still, until now, I want the work to speak for itself, and for it to catch the eyes of the person that I want to work with. So I don't know. I guess it depends.
It's a tricky one, Marie, because I think I don't have an issue. You know, if Khalid calls me up or wants some advice, it's completely fine. Other DPs, whatever. But at the end of the day, for me, it's a strange one, because I think when you're on set, you're doing a job, and you've got to be a professional, and you answer to the director. And so if you become too close to that director, where does that relationship start and end? And I've been caught out a few times. I've become too close to a few directors, and it can be extremely difficult. And then of course there's the whole. It's a funny one. It's a weird one for me to talk about. But if I'm going to have a relationship with a director, it should be I think it should be quite standoffish. I don't like to get too close. I think it's important.
Yeah, I know you don't. I know you don't. I think it's important. I believe you, and I remember you telling me this years ago, and I didn't really. I don't know. It's not that I put it off, but I couldn't understand it. I was like, just be an open book with everybody that you meet and become friends. I mean, if it comes naturally, become friends with this person and be close to them. But
yeah,
I understand it now more than ever, that if you become too close, it's a really kind of dangerous territory to be in.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm also kind of upfront with the people that I collaborate with, that if they want to work with somebody else, great. If that person is right for the project, then
it's hard. But it's hard though, Khalid, because if you it's all about unseen synapses connecting with another person's mind, and it's all chemistry, it's all chemicals. It's a strange balance. Whether it's falling in love with a man or a woman, or having a relationship with a director, or just becoming friends with someone, It's an unknown chemistry, and often when that happens, it's difficult to kind of keep your distance. Do you know what I mean?
I know. 100%.
It's hard.
100%.
Very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
hard.
it is.
So, and it's the same with people beneath. I remember becoming too close to one of my focus pullers who became too tight.
Yeah.
And there was one time on set where he wasn't all there, and I was like, "What's wrong with you? You know, what's going on?" And that friendship, relationship, business partnership, it became blurred, and it shouldn't have ever gone to that position. It shouldn't have ever done, you know. And
yeah, it's like involving family with work, you know. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, totally. You know, those occasions where you hear about focus pullers and clapper loaders being together, or a DP going out with his or her focus puller or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, are you insane? That's madness. So
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's tricky because you're in the trenches with them, so you do develop emotions towards the people you're working with. But I hear what you're saying about you have to have some kind of wall up to protect yourself. Like we should all. It's still a job.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, it's life's just about learning, and we're all learning, so it's all good.
Well, is there anything else you guys wanted to just quickly mention or talk about before we sign off?
Wear a mask.
Everyone, please wear your mask. Practice social distancing.
But seriously.
Yeah. Not even do it.
Wear a fucking mask. Khalid, where's your mask?
Actually, that's funny. You say that, and I'm looking for my mask, and I don't know where it is. And I look at it. Where on earth did I put it? Okay. Yeah, but we've just moved to this hotel, and we've been going and moving from hotel to hotel to hotel to hotel for the last month. And sometimes you forget the mask. Like I forget the mask in my hotel room all the time. And then you have to walk like 10 minutes to get to the cars, right? And I get to the cars and I'm like, fuck, I forgot my mask, and I have to go back and get it. But yeah, wear your mask. Absolutely.
Be nice to everyone as well, unless they're not being nice. In fact, even if someone's not being nice to you, be nice to that person.
You know, I got a really nice piece of advice a few days ago that really I've been thinking about, and it's stuck with me, and I think that I want to share it.
Go on.
I don't know how I'm going to say it, because the person that told me this put it in a very sophisticated way, but like because everybody has an ego, no matter who you are. There's no such thing as someone without an ego. So be confident and be your own raging bull, but keep it internal. You know, keep it internal and don't let it out. You know. I think that was and the reason why I really like that is because of everything that I've been told is that I'm really aggressive, and I'm it could come across as an ego, and I never want it to come across as an ego. It's just like the 3 C's. Devin Mann, Devin Mann always preaches the 3 C's of being cool, calm, and collected. So like be your own really aggressive person, but come across as cool, calm, and collected, and you will succeed. And I took that really seriously. I mean, look, I didn't take it really seriously because I haven't lived it yet, but I'm thinking about it. I think about it since I've heard it. I can't stop thinking about it. Every time I go to bed, I think about that.
I've heard of this Devin Mann fella.
Yeah,
I've heard of him.
Strange man.
Very strange man.
Yeah.
You know, wears snakeskin jackets.
From the 80s.
From the 80s, yeah. has got the entire back catalogue of Journey.
Yeah.
The 80s band journey. Anyway.
No, I hear that clearly. Like, it's power within you, but keep it cool on the outside.
Yeah. Like be confident in every single thing that you do, but just don't project it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you for just sitting down, chatting with me. I think we got places that I did not expect, and I loved it, and I hope our audience enjoyed it as well. I also want to give a quick shout out to the rest of my partners at Film Roundtable, Aaron Weil, Doug Torres, Matthew Wolf, and Bradford Young, who, this wouldn't be here without. And thanks again to Ari. And everyone, you can follow us on Instagram, you can subscribe to our website, and you'll have updates about upcoming roundtables. So thanks, guys.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was great to chat.
Well, thank you.
Speak soon, Khalid.
And find your mask.
I'll text you.
Bye.
Bye.